Coming up on the Carter Cadence.
What's the secret to the consistency? Because it's hard to keep kids' interests nowadays. You may have a class one year that's only got 5 seniors. It doesn't seem like that happens in North Murray.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time. I tell the young coaches on my staff that want to be head coaches, and I think the number one thing, you got to build the culture of your program.
Hello and welcome back to the Carter Cadence. I'm your host, Brooks Carter. Welcome into another edition of the show. Glad you could join us again this week, and got an exciting show on tap with a couple of different really fun moving parts this week. Got North Murray head football coach Preston Poag on to talk to us. He will talk about how they've built one of the most sustaining programs in Northwest Georgia as he enters his 10th season with the North Murray Mountaineers. The Mountaineers made the playoffs all 9 years prior, have had a winning season all 9 years, and in fact, for Coach Preston Poag, he's made it to the playoffs 12 straight years if you go back to his time at Christian Heritage. We'll talk all about that coming up in this week's Coaches Conversation. In this week's NWGA Throwback segment, I'd mentioned I was going to do kind of an NFL draft thing. We will resume that next week. I wanted to do something kind of based off a social media post that I put out this past week, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that coming up towards the last segment of the show. But we're going to take a look back at the 1991 Cartersville-Pepperell game, an all-time classic that included a defending state champion with the Pepperell Dragons going up against an eventual state champion in 1991, the Cartersville-Pepperell Hurricanes. Just a great matchup, and we'll talk all about that with video in this week's NWGA Throwback segment. We'll set the show up here. As always, please follow along on YouTube. We're at Brooks Carter Media is the YouTube channel. You can just search the Carter Cadence and find it there. Search the Carter Cadence on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Had a little bit of a glitch with last week's show where the audio episode was available on Apple Podcasts. Something happened with the video episode where it didn't upload correctly. Couldn't quite figure it out on Spotify, but we'll make sure that we get it up in the right place this week. But you can always watch on the YouTube channel each week. Follow along on social media. I'm at Brooks Carter Media on Instagram and TikTok, and at Brooks A. Carter on X. And you can follow Northwest Georgia Football on Facebook, X, and Instagram at NWGA Football. Let's go ahead and get into it. Here is this week's Player Spotlight. All right, so this week's Player Spotlight is C.J. Reece, Mike linebacker for the Fannin County Rebels, and CJ had quite the junior campaign, monster hit there on that first play you see, but he led all of single A D1 in tackles last year. I think I saw 131 tackles he had. He was first team all-region. Great stop in the backfield there. You see him flowing through. I mean, and he is impressive on film. He's just got that classic middle linebacker look and just eats up ball carriers, especially in the run game, and he's underrated in the pass game too. You see here, kind of sniffs out the play, makes a big hit down on the goal line, keeps them from getting in. Here against Dade County, does a really good job just reading the defense, and as soon as he sees ball, he gets ball, and he read that one there, stops the quarterback in the backfield for a loss. I believe this is a playoff game maybe here. Big stop there for a loss. Several tackles for a loss here. This was against the state's leading rusher, Zayden Cook, Chattooga here up the middle, and just look at that. No forward momentum for Zayden Cook as C.J. Reece stops him in the backfield, and I believe that was a 4th down stop there. Tell you another thing he does really well. Underneath routes, reading those in the pass game. He does a really good job doing that. You'll see a couple of screens pop up on here too that he does a really good job reading. Here against Gordon Central, I think this was wound up being a Saturday game. But look at him come through and read on that screen there, or a little pop screen out to the running back in the flats. Now the whole defense does a good job on this play, that he does a great job coming in and finishing it up there for a loss. Got him lined up at outside linebacker here. I'd said Mike linebacker. He kind of does a little bit of, they'll line him up everywhere at linebacker. Here on a punt return, comes through, helps clean this one up. I mean, he will lower the boom on you. He's got a heavy set of pads on him when he comes in. Here against Christian Heritage, this wound up being for the region championship down in 7 single A. My gosh, just knocks him out. I told you he'd lower the boom on you. Here against Rabun County, as they almost get a safety here. Couldn't quite tell what the official said. Now against Union County on the road in non-region here, comes in, and I mean, just reckless, relentless pursuit of the ball is what I like about his game. Read that screen there, knocks him out, no gain, in fact a loss on the play there. Against Rabun County here once again. Comes in, tackle for loss. Now against Gilmer. Walked up right here on the line of scrimmage and just eats that guy up for a loss there. Gilmer running that wing tee, kind of a throwback look that you don't see as much anymore. One cool thing too is they'll sneak him up and line him up in a 3 or 4 point stance too on the defensive line front. You'll see it in the goal line formation later on tape here too. Against Dade County here, another big stop in the backfield. Just excellent job reading his keys. He is, see right here, they got him lined up down in a 4 point stance, walked him up from his linebacker position, and just absolutely comes through scot-free, stops Zayden Cook in the backfield, back against Union County here. But as I mentioned, just really good job reading his keys, knowing, and that goes back to studying film. You can just tell this guy's an intelligent football player. Splits a double team there from a running back and an offensive lineman, gets through for a loss. Now here back in region play against Coosa. Looking, and just going to step up, and quarterback took a little too long to throw the football, and he comes through and forces an errant throw back against Christian Heritage, and he seemed to have a big night here. Another tackle for loss there. Still in region play against Dade County here, coming up the middle, shucks off a blocker, makes a stop there for a minimal gain. Against Gordon Central, just coming through, and I mean, he's just really, really impressive. And we'll stop the tape here after this play as we're about the 5-minute mark against Gordon Central once again. Looking, and just comes in, cleans the quarterback up, forces him into an errant throw, and he's a really impressive football player. That was the first fan submission. His mother actually DM'd us and said, check out CJ Reece. Glad we did, because CJ is a really talented football player. He is what you want from a high school football linebacker. I mean, he is just the stereotype of a small town Northwest Georgia football player. I mean, just strong. He's not, just doesn't wow you with that athleticism, but he's got enough athleticism, and he's smart. And I mean, he will absolutely knock you out, and I love that. He's a fun football player to watch on film. Excited to see what he can do here in his senior season as he continues to look to rack up the accolades. As I mentioned, was a first-team All-Region player this past year, and one of the state leaders in tackles with over 130 tackles on the season. So that's this week's Player Spotlight, CJ Reece. Coming up next, we will talk with North Murray head football coach Preston Poag in this week's Coaches Conversation. An exciting one with him. Stick around. This is the Carter Cadence.
Welcome back into the Carter Cadence. Now talking with North Murray head football coach Preston Poag. Coach Poag, thank you for joining us on the Carter Cadence.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Coach, I've been talking a lot to the coaches I've spoke with so far on the show. I'm so interested in coaching career paths, and I grew up in Dalton. I've known your name. I've known kind of your coaching history. Obviously, your brother's a coach as well, and you played at Dalton. You coached at Dalton. You went to Christian Heritage or at North Murray. You've never really left the area of what I consider to be. I think technically they call it the Dalton metropolitan area. I don't know if it's a metropolitan area. I don't feel that way about it, but the Murray Whitfield area. You've really kind of stayed close to the community that you've been in for a very long time. Has that been intentional? Have you had opportunities to go elsewhere?
I have. It seems like every year I'm always dreaming I'm going somewhere else, but this is home. I've talked to my wife many times about different jobs and people contact me and stuff, but this is home for me, and I enjoy this area. I mean, our parents from here, and like I said, I went to high school here, and so it's been a blessing being in North Murray. The next year will be my 10th year.
Yeah, I knew you were getting ready to go into your 10th year, and one thing that has been consistent with you there is the program under your leadership. You've made the playoffs all 9 years. If you go back as a head coach, I think you've made it now 12 years in a row, including your time at Christian Heritage. What's the secret sauce here? How have you built such a consistent product over your 9 years at North Murray? I think that's super interesting when you look at it, because I've talked to some other coaches about this. You don't really have many dips. If you do, it's maybe a year like a 6-5 year last year, but you're still in the postseason. You're still having a winning record every year. What's the secret to the consistency? Because it's hard to keep kids' interests nowadays. You may have a class one year that's only got 5 seniors. It doesn't seem like that happens at North Murray.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time. I tell the young coaches on my staff that want to be head coaches, and I think the number one thing, you got to build a culture of your program. I was taught that at Dalton under Bill Chappell, and I say culture that you're going to play hard, you're going to work hard, but you're also going to believe you can beat anybody you play, and hold kids accountable, and all that stuff comes in with the culture. But your kids have got to buy in, and as a coach, you got to be consistent with what you do. And I felt like I've done that. I've had some great assistant coaches, and as a head coach, you put the culture out there, but it's the job of the assistants to help you keep that culture. And kids these days, you got to keep the culture mentality in front of them all the time. They got all sorts of stuff going on, and you can't just say you have a good culture and never really visit that. So I think with me, I visit that about every day, and that's a big part of it. Here in North Murray, our kids are just hard-nosed players. I mean, we're not overly talented. I've had some good players, but we have guys that just like this team I got coming up. I was telling the other day that how hard they work, and they understand the culture. And they know what it takes to win, and it's just not something given to have a winning season or given to make the playoffs. We have to work our tails off, and and they buy into that stuff, and it's a positive thing for us.
Yeah, I mean, definitely so. I've spoken, as I mentioned, with coaches about kind of what that looks like. How do you not have those kind of years where maybe you only wind up winning 2 or 3 games, but you're able to build it back? I think it's super impressive what you've been able to do, going on a decade of winning seasons there. I think that's got to be I feel like that's the expectation now. Is that something that you feel like has kind of trickled down to your kids when they come through there, that they've now watched from the time they were in elementary and middle school, consistent playoff caliber teams? It feels like they probably arrive on campus, and that's the expectation now, is we're going to win football games.
Yeah, and it's nice here. I mean, the middle school's under our same umbrella. So we, one of my assistant coaches middle school, and they practice here, and they get a little taste of it to see what's going on. I think the mindset of the whole deal is you got to have the mindset. Your coaches have to have the mindset. I don't ever want one of my coaches to, and I've been around coaches say, "Oh God, we're going to be bad this year, this or that." That should never come out of our coaches' mouths. right? It's our job to get them right and work them hard. And the mindset, if the coaches don't have the mindset, it just doesn't work. It doesn't. And I think we've been blessed with that, and the mindset of just knowing we got to work hard and be grinding top teams and be really physical. And the kids, you're right. As elementary, middle school, they sort of see all that kind of stuff and see the excitement that it brings making the playoffs and this and that, and it helps us.
One thing that has stuck out to me about your teams while you've been there is, I go back just 2 seasons ago, kind of throwing the ball all over the yard. You got Judson Petty as a all-state wide receiver, breaking records, catching the football. And then you turn around and come out the first game this past season against Dalton, and you're running the I-form, triple option veer. Totally different look than you had than the previous year. And that's quite the overhaul. You've really seemed to adapt to your personnel. Where does that versatility and philosophy come from?
Yeah, I mean, I know coaches that try to, if you're a spread team and maybe you don't have the right quarterback or you don't have the guys around him to do that. And I know guys do it. It's like beating your head against the wall. I mean, it's not going to work. I mean, if you don't have the right players for the right offense. So people don't know this, but I'm a big option guy. I mean, I was brought up at the eye and option and being power and being counter and being physical. And, so we did that this year. We lost our quarterback. We had one of the better quarterbacks in the state, and he ends up going to Warner Robins. And I didn't really have a quarterback, so we moved Hewlett to quarterback, and it's just the type of player he is. Hard-nosed players. That's why we did that kind of stuff, and we had success doing it too. And everybody says, asked me during the season, well, how many passes have you thrown this year? And I would always say, well, not enough. It's my philosophy sometimes, but I love to throw the ball. But people didn't realize they always thought my offenses were wide open. But we were pretty 50-50 running pass. But this last year we were run heavy. But it just depends what personnel you have and what's going to make them successful. I hate putting kids in a position they're not going to be successful, right? If you put a kid, it can't throw the ball great. In a spread offense, that's not a good thing. So we'll do whatever it takes us to win. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, Hudson wound up leading the region in rushing last year. I'm pretty sure I put the stat graphic out. I think he's second in our area of all the 55 high schools that we cover. Averaged over 129 yards rushing a game last year. So one thing about him that I noticed too is that he's not super tall, so but it almost works to his advantage. He's hard to see behind the line of scrimmage back there.
Yes, they lose him behind there.
Yeah, so that really works in his favor. I know you get asked about Ladd McConkey quite a bit, so I wanted to ask you maybe something that you haven't quite been asked about. Obviously people have heard a lot of stories about him and know how successful he's been at now Georgia and into the NFL. But I'm curious from a program standpoint, what has he done or what has his now path into the NFL done to elevate North Murray's football program?
Yeah, I mean, you could just see kids walking around with his jersey. I mean, stuff like that everybody knows Ladd. And it's pretty special. He played I was over at middle school the other day talking to the kids, and I said, it wasn't many years ago that Ladd McConkey was sitting right here where you guys were. And now whoever thought he'd be an NFL player in middle school, right?
Yeah.
So hard to make the NFL. But I said, why can't it be you guys? Stuff like that helps you because, man, I never want to say a kid he can't do this or that. I mean, if you got a dream, go for it. And he sort of showed that, a kid that was undersized and man could play anywhere on the field, but all these guys would come in here and recruit him, and they would love his film. And I called him in my office. I could tell by the look in their eye, like, this guy's tiny. I had guys tell me from the SEC, well, what happens if a SEC DB gets in his face? And I said, they won't touch him. So it worked out for him. It was, but it's a hard road for him. People don't realize he was getting recruited by some of these 1AA schools, but nothing really big until all that happened. So, anytime every Ladd McConkey and these kids, it's a special thing. But one thing he does too, he comes around. I mean, after he got drafted last year, he's in our weight room the next day, that Monday following the draft. And all our kids are like, "Oh man, Lad's here." And I said, "Whoa, wait just a minute, man. Lad was just in line right before we get going. We get in line and stretch. He was just in line, just like you guys 4 or 5 years ago. So we don't act like that." But after that, it was like he was still one of us, and But he comes around. He was here this week, matter of fact, and he was talking about how we could do some camps this summer. So all that stuff helps having him around. But the biggest thing is how he acts. I mean, he's got it made right now. He's living a great life in NFL and all this stuff, but you would never know. I mean, you would never know. He's just a humble, great kid that loves this area.
Yeah, I can remember back to 2019, his senior year. I was calling a game as the opposing team, and I think he scored 7 touchdowns against us that night. He had 2 punt returns. I think he had a pick 6, threw for 1, ran for a couple more. I mean, it was like truly video game stuff. 7 touchdowns. It was unbelievable. He's one of the best I've ever seen. But from a player's standpoint, you've been able to coach some other really good players, and there's a couple of coaches that are currently that I've talked to coaching their own sons. As someone who did that several years ago now, kind of reflecting back on that experience, have you ever taken time to kind of think back about what that was like, coaching your son and having him come through the program kind of in the early years, kind of helping set the foundation for where you're at now?
I mean, it was awesome. I sat down PJ and, ended up playing him. I think against Kahala, I brought him in that game and he sort of just took off. But it was special. I mean, and I told him before all this stuff happened, before he got the starting role, I said, "Here's the deal, man. People's always going to talk about you're the coach's son, and that's why you're playing quarterback." And I said, "You know how you stop that stuff, don't you?" He said, "No." I said, "Play really good." And he did. He had a good career and played well. And I think back on those times and it flies by. I talk to coaches now that their son's getting ready to play for them and they're all excited. I said, "Man, enjoy every minute of it," because, coaching's lifestyle, man, you are working your tail off all the time and it flies by. But what great memories, a lot of big games that we won right at the end. Like getting into the playoffs for the first time in North Murray history, just a lot of cool stuff.
You mentioned Coach Chappell back at the beginning of our conversation, and I imagine he would be one of the answers for this. But tell me a little bit about, Coach Bill Chappell and if there's any other coaches that have influenced your career.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Chappell, the biggest thing he's influenced, just a hard nose. It's all about the team. It's not about you, no matter how good you are. That's what all his teams were like that, just hard nosed. And some teams were more talented than others, but you was going to be in for a fight when you played them. And just a loyal guy. I mean, he always, me and him had a great relationship. He had a great relationship with his players, but I think even more special with quarterbacks. He trusted the quarterback, and I see myself like that too. I mean, I've had really good quarterbacks, and sometimes they come to the sideline and say, "Hey, man, this is open, or let's run this or that," and you think I go with it because I've worked with them so much, they know what to look for, and 9 times out of 10 they're right on. So he brought that. I played for a guy at NC State, Dick Sheridan, who he was all about the team too. I mean, he was demanding. At a college level, I mean, you don't see that much these days, how strict he was. I mean, we had a receiver named Naz Worthen one year, and he got in trouble, and it wasn't really that bad of trouble, but he kicked him off for the whole year and made him play scout team. Just to prove that, man, no one person is more important than a team. And that's how I am. For those 2 guys, that was a big deal to me. And you can ask any of these kids on my team. They know it's about the team. I don't care what your stats are. I don't care about none of that stuff, man. It's about the team and how you fit on the team. So.
And then last thing I'll finish up with here is, tell me about what your favorite memory from your playing days are. I love hearing some of these guys who have been several years removed from the game. I love kind of stepping back in time and hearing about that.
You talking about playing or coaching?
Playing days.
Playing. I give playing and coaching. I think that my biggest memory at playing quarterback at NC State. We beat Clemson in Death Valley. They had the number one defense in the country. They had Michael Dean Perry, and they had a bunch of good guys to play pro. But we were playing them, and we got a 28-0 lead on them. And that place was quiet. It's just set up for our little section of the stadium. And anyway, they came back. We got real conservative. I threw a bunch the first half, but we got real conservative because they had a quarterback they didn't think could throw very good. And so we sort of sat on the ball, and we won. No, it was 30-0 at halftime. We won 30-28. You talk about that second half. It was so loud, but we ended up squeaking it out. But just memories of playing in front of Clemson. Clemson recruited me, so I've been there a bunch of times, and it was pretty cool. Playing coaching-wise, I've had some really good ones. I mean, we always seemed like we always had great games against the Daresville. We'd win right at the last minute. So I think it was Preston's maybe his senior year. We play them, and they score and take the lead, and they're up like 5 points. And we drive it down there, and we throw a comeback, and the receiver ends up catching on the 1 yard line. And the Daresville's all celebrating and stuff, and we work on this, man. We rushed down the field and snapped the ball. I didn't think we were going to get the snap in time with 2 seconds left, and our receiver's over there by himself. He just tossed it over there to him for a touchdown.
Oh, wow.
That's some good stuff. But
that is good stuff. I mean, that's what Thursday practice, that's what walkthrough is all about, going through that kind of stuff.
I do some of that stuff right in the middle of practice too, just because stuff like that wins games for you, but you got to practice that stuff, execute it. So, but like I said, I want to say this too. Being here, this will be my 10th year. What a great place! What great administration! All the stuff is awesome here. The one thing that frustrates me is it seems like every year people doubt us. I mean, I look at the rankings of the 50-something teams in this area, and we're ranked like 36th or 37th. And our kids take that stuff personal, and I do too. But it seems like every year we got to prove people wrong, and that's sort of our mindset too. We know that, and so it seems like that's every year, and that motivates us. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I do want to publicly acknowledge that we have nothing to do with those rankings. It's not opinion based, and a lot of people get confused and think it is. It's like no, these are these ranking services, and I don't always know how. Sorry, I was getting a phone call in the middle of the interview there, but I don't always know. I don't always know how these teams really come up with all this stuff, or how these services come up with it. And, it's definitely interesting because it's like, they haven't caught up in some areas. We've got, for example, North Cobb Christian, who's got their quarterback gone.
3 top receivers are gone.
Yeah. And I mean, and I don't want to, talk disparagingly about any of our 55 teams, but I mean, that is an obvious thing that's gone on is they've got several key players that won't be back this year that they did not lose to graduation. They just transferred out of the program, and I don't think Cal Preps has caught up to that yet. So it is springtime. We'll have a new batch out from them before the season starts, so maybe it'll catch up and it'll look a little different between now and then. But I know, I mean, there's a lot of people that take that stuff to heart, and I think it's great. I think it's great motivation for the kids. And
no doubt. That came out the next morning in weight training. Like, okay, coach, they got us ranked like 30-something out of 50-something, and those rankings don't really mean anything, but it can be good bulletin board material and motivation for these kids because they see what teams are ahead of us. It's like, man, we will always beat those teams, and but it's year to year. You have to work your tail off to get ready, and we'll do the same this coming year.
Coach, thank you for joining us here on the Carter Cadence. Coach Preston Poag from North Murray. Thanks for joining us, Coach.
All right, thanks, man.
Welcome back into the Carter Cadence. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Preston Poag, a guy who's been around the block for a little while now. He's one of the longest tenured head coaches in Northwest Georgia, the longest being current Northwest Whitfield coach Josh Robinson. But Coach Poag not too far behind him, as I mentioned, going into his 10th year as the head coach, and he is closing in on 100 career wins as well. He's got 89, so he's he's a guy who's been around for a minute and continues to kind of build and elevate those career numbers the longer he does it. So I hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with him. So this week's NWGA Throwback segment, we are going to step back in time a little over 30 years to 1991. I put a social media graphic out this past week of the longest winning streaks in NWGA football history. All of them that were featured were 20-plus game win streaks. Obviously, we know about Cartersville and Rome, who had the 41 and the 40-game win streaks. Several more on that list, though, that maybe you didn't know about or maybe forgot about, and included several Floyd County teams. West and East Rome were on there a few times, and then we had some on there like Model and Pepperell, and that brings us to this week's NWGA Throwback segment. Pepperell won the 1990 state championship, a perfect 15-0 season. They started the following year 7-0. Number one ranked in the state. They go into this game at home against Cartersville, who would be the eventual state champion that year. They took a 7-0 lead into halftime, and then several mistakes, several great plays by Cartersville in the second half turned into what would be an all-time classic. Let's get into it. Let's roll the tape. Here is this week's Throwback segment. So a little handshake here. Look at the high shoulder pads. Gotta love that. So sorry about the film quality, guys. This is 1991. I don't know what else to say. But start out here on offense. Pepperell does a couple of big runs to get them started. They scored on the opening drive of the game to get down, to get that 7-0 lead. And as I mentioned, that 7-0 lead would hold for the entire first half. Two really great defenses. They stalemated a lot of punts, 3-and-outs, a couple of run-heavy teams. 6:21 in the first quarter, you see it was 7-0. Now in the second half here, Cartersville makes an interception, finally gets something going positive for them. Hadn't had much going all game. They get all the way down inside the red zone after the interception. So they've got it 1st and goal. And they'll punch it in here on the short run to make it 7-6. Now, the extra point does wind up either getting blocked or missed. Yeah, blocked here. Wind up getting blocked. So Pepperell maintained the lead, 7-6, with 6:09 in the third quarter. Ensuing drive by Pepperell. They come out, fumble it on the quarterback exchange. Cartersville picks it up and runs it back for a touchdown. So bang, bang. Cartersville, who's had nothing going on offense all night, 2 huge defensive plays, and all of a sudden they're in the lead, 12-7. Number one ranked Pepperell with a 21-game winning streak is trailing at this point. They do hold them out on the 2-point conversion, so it makes the score 12-7. But now at 5:03 in the third quarter, Pepperell is behind. Ensuing drive again, a big sack from Cartersville on 3rd down, forces it into a punting situation for Pepperell. And they come through and block the punt. Now this did give Cartersville really good field position, but they couldn't wind up doing anything with it. But eventually back here in the fourth quarter now as we move forward in the game, big run down the sideline, knocked out of bounds, and that sets them up in field goal range where they'll boot it through, and that'll make it 15-7. So now they're up by a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. 8-point lead with 7:06 remaining in the game. Pepperell gets the passing game going finally here. Marches it right down the field after a few good plays here through the air. A little throwback pass to the running back. Rolling out here, hits a man down the sidelines. Gets him down inside the red zone, inside the 15 in fact, and they punch it in on a QB sneak a few plays later. That makes it 15-13. Remember, Pepperell's got to go for 2 here. So this defending state champion, 21-game win streak on the line here. They go for 2. Little quick toss sweep out to the right side. They clear everything out. Running back gets in. Tie ball game, 15 apiece with 2:59 remaining in the game. Cartersville still hadn't really done a lot on offense all day. Little play action pass here though, and they find their man wide open. And they take the lead here, 21 to what will eventually be 22-15. Look at them dog piling on. I don't know how a celebration penalty wasn't called. But Pepperell comes right back here and is able to get back down the field again. First down pass there, gets a few yards. Another good-looking pass, breaks out of a tackle down the left sideline. Got him really far down in there. He did fumble, but they wound up rolling him down there. But here they are down in the goal line, and they fumble the football. With less than 20 seconds left, they're down, about to go into the end zone, and they fumble it. 22 seconds left, and that's it. Cartersville comes out, runs out the clock, breaks the defending state champions' hearts and their 21-game win streak. And what's crazy is Pepperell winds up going from being 15-0 the year before, winning the state title, starting 7-0 the next year, 21-game win streak. They lose at home to Cartersville and then follow it up the very next week with a loss to Darlington, and then they missed the playoffs altogether. So we're talking about a team that was #1 ranked in the state all season long in 1991, coming off a state title, hadn't lost all year. They lost 2 weeks in a row, missed the playoffs, finished 8-2. Talk about heartbreak. That's crazy. Rusty Mansell, who does a lot with high school football recruiting and covering Georgia football in the state of Georgia. Many of you know who he is. He played at Pepperell, and he was on the team at this time. He responded to that social media graphic that I pushed out that kind of inspired this about the longest winning streaks. Those regions were stacked back then, and you had to be really, really good to make the playoffs. And he talked about how he played from 89 through 91, obviously won the state title in 1990, but they went 8-2 in 89 and missed the playoffs. So his team's lost 4 games his entire varsity tenure in 3 years and only made the playoffs once. Now, they got the ring out of it, but that still just kind of shows you the competitive nature back then. But that is this week's NWGA Throwback segment. Hope you guys enjoyed that. 1991, Cartersville and Pepperell. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's show. Coming up on next week's show, we're going to have new Dalton Catamount head coach Chris Pruitt, who has come up to the Northwest Georgia area from Roswell after coaching the Hornets for several years down there and several deep playoff runs. He's hoping to get the Catamounts back as they're coming off their worst season in program history. That's saying a lot. That's a program that's been around for a very, very long time, never had a winless season. That's what they had last year. And as he comes in and takes over, we'll talk to him about how things have been going, what his plan for the program is. So excited about that. But thank you guys for tuning in. As always, follow the show on YouTube at Brooks Carter Media is the YouTube channel, or just search the Carter Cadence. You can do that on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Follow us on social media. I'm at Brooks A. Carter on Twitter and at Brooks Carter Media on Instagram and TikTok. And follow Northwest Georgia Football, just NWGA Football, everywhere on social media. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch up next week. This has been the Carter Cadence.